Okay, we are back to talk about Silo, Season 2, Episode 8, The Book of Quinn. This episode written by Remy Aubuchon and directed by Amber Templemore, and this show taken from a series of short stories by Hugh Howey. In Episode 8, looking at Silo 17 first, Juliet is actually stricken with the bends after coming up in the water so quickly in the last episode. She must go back in the water to heal herself instead of hunting for Solo and those who have attacked him. But when she does surface again, she's shot with an arrow, manages to escape. Eventually, though, she does run into three people who threaten to kill her, just like they did to Solo. In Silo 18, Lucas Kyle is searching through Judge Meadows' books to try and crack Salvador Quinn's code. Leads him to research some of Quinn's ancestors. He goes and tracks them down. Terrence Pembroke is his name. They are ashamed of Quinn, but after Bernard tells Lucas that Salvador Quinn actually helped institute 140 years of peace, Quinn's ancestors admit that it was Quinn's copy of the pact that he needs to help break the code. Lucas does find it and begins the first steps of decoding Quinn's message. Meanwhile, in the Down Deep, Walker, wanting to get Carla back, meets with Bernard and agrees to be his spy in order to help Carla. She sells out her mechanical friends who are captured when they try to raid the supply for resources. In addition, we see more about Sheriff Billings and his wife. She learns that the sheriff saved a picture of the before times from a book, demands to see it. They share it with one another. I just have to say that this coming into this episode, they got me. I think, led me to believe something was going to happen. Some exposition, some answers, a flashback, something, and we really didn't get it. And I don't know, what what we did get necessarily compared to what we should have gotten, but this was not what I was expecting with this episode. I was expecting, I guess, more to do and more that we would learn.
Yeah, it was a bit frustrating.
Yeah.
Um, I believe we talked about this at the end of last week's podcast. We were really excited about the cliffhangers we were left on and each silo, and noted that the name of episode 8 was the Book of Quinn. It's like, okay, we're going to finally find out what's in this code, terrible truth that wrecked Meadows' life and all of this. And no, it really does kind of feel like instead, the creators of the show, the showrunner, whoever is to blame here, said, okay, well, not yet. Hold up, right? That's episode 9 stuff. That's episode 10 stuff. We're only on episode 8. We got to kind of spin our wheels a little bit. That was
Uh,
how it felt. That was largely how it felt,
it did
unfortunately.
feel like spinning wheels. I guess we can. I guess if we want to start, say Silo 17, yeah, to we see who these people are that have attacked apparently Solo and now clearly Juliet at the very last frame of this episode. That's only after Juliet starts feeling the effects of the things Solo told her she might have. She has to go back into the water for a while, which to me, and I put this in my piece, just felt like, oh, we just have nothing else to do with her other than just walk around the silo looking for people for 45 minutes until we get to the end where she actually encounters them. So
Yeah.
it's clearly pointing to some kind of sort of pace where that story aligns with what's happening in Silo 18. But man, it just felt like, Julia just had to do an engineering project on her body this time as opposed to like a machine and just didn't get us anywhere.
Yeah, I wish I could say I was more surprised on that front.
Yeah.
I do think I noted last week when we were talking about the bends that they can take some time to set in, right? I think I noted at the end of last week's episode, she might
Yeah.
seem fine now, but don't be surprised if next week she's got the bends and has to deal with that and all of that, which of course is what happened. Um, I wanted to ask you, with some levity, did you get the reference of how I put this in our notes on the show sheet?
Is this from a song? Because I tried to do it from memory and I couldn't recall what it was from.
Yeah, yeah. I put lyrics from Radiohead's song "The Bends" on our show sheet.
Oh, okay, okay. That's what it is.
But I was listening to the song back because it was making me think of it. And the lyrics are like really kind of resonating with the episode a little bit. And my baby's got the bends, so no. And the fact that the like one line, recurring line is, "I wish that something would happen." Like, so
Amen. Amen, Radiohead.
um, because you said in your little summary about Solo, one of these, I don't even know what to call this group, but one of them says that they killed Solo. I don't actually believe that. I think Solo's alive. What about?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we don't know. We get so little here. And
Hmm.
in part because the confrontation is so adversarial, so antagonistic, it's stop or we're gonna kill you, like we killed that other guy, shoot you with an arrow, and then even when they run into each other again at the end, it's still, I'm gonna kill you. And presumably, like, that's not what's going to happen here.
Right. Of
And it
course.
actually could be really interesting to learn about who these people are and so on and so forth, but we get nothing along those lines. Um,
The
except,
only interesting thing out of this is that they're apparently very young.
yeah, that's what I was
That
going to say.
so that raises a lot of questions, but where did teenagers or very, very young adults come from in this setting?
Yeah, and that is interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit. But a related question: did Solo know they were there? Have they been there the whole time? I think they have been there the whole time
Yeah.
because if you think back, there have been a lot of shots throughout the season, kind of from a distance. And there was Juliet's rope back in season 2, episode 1, that appeared to be cut. And I think now we can say, okay, they did cut a rope, which means they tried to kill her that time already. Um, who are these people? I mean, is there some part of the silo that they've been living in and managed to live in that is sealed off in some way where they have a food source, and could these actually be children of the people who were there when the rebellion happened, or did the rebellion actually not happen as long ago as we thought it happened? I mean, I was thinking that originally, and then I kind of landed on accepting that it did happen at least 25 years ago, or maybe 45 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, so I really don't know, and it is a little frustrating again that we don't really get much to work with here.
Yeah, there's just what that means though is that we have a lot of information we have to find out about this group, where they've come from, who they are, what do they have to do with the rebellion that happened some number of years before this scenario that's happening right now. So we have to do all of that apparently in episode 9, and then try to it just worries me that we're gonna have to really hustle to connect the dots or connect the silos in episode 10, considering that we're gonna have to spend some time figuring out who these people are in the next one.
Another possibility for you. Then this is what I hope. Actually, they're from another silo
Okay.
that, um, perhaps before Juliet arrived at Solo 17, they did. They
Yeah.
managed to pull off a rebellion in their silo, perhaps, managed to get outside safely, you know, and came to this other silo where the door was open, and obviously it seems like everyone's dead, and they've been trying to get into the vault.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now they've taken this opportunity to, you know, take take Solo hostage in order to make him let them into the vault. Something like that. That seems like the most interesting possibility to me. Of course, in some way, I have to also factor in that Solo is not Solo. Right? He's pretending to be this guy who I was noticing someone point out that we actually saw the real Solo back in episode 1.
In episode 1, who is the real Solo then?
I mean, just some guy. I mean, just like so. Just
Oh,
that
oh, from that flashback from the rebellion.
in the
I
flashback,
see.
right?
Okay.
That then later Juliet finds a photograph of him that the actor who's in the photograph was in the scenes in the flashback in
I see. Okay.
episode 1, for whatever that's worth. And of course,
Yeah.
Steve Zahn is not in those scenes.
Right.
So all that's got to hang together in some way. This is my hope, Ryan, because I feel like what I'm really hoping is that somehow in these last two episodes, it opens up. The story
Yeah.
opens up more. The world opens up more. We know that we've been told there are 48 other silos.
Mhm.
At the end of season 1, we saw that city on the horizon or what
Yeah.
have you. So that's my real hope, is that things crack open.
Yeah. As we learn more about this group, I think now that you explain it, that's probably a real possibility that they have come from somewhere else. They've explored and found this is the only place they can get into that might be habitable for them. They discovered that someone is in there. That explains some of Solo's paranoia and also his reluctance to stray too far away from the vault. Um, why he initially trusted Juliet when he felt like there are other people there who might be trying to do something to him. I don't know, but we'll just have to see how much they give us there.
No, that's good, because that's a weird one. Does
Yeah.
Solo know these people are there?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm, no, maybe no. Yeah, maybe yeah. Um, we have to think back to his initial interactions with Juliet. And in part, he seemed to be unsure as to whether she was real.
Hmm.
If he knew that these other people were out there for sure, I don't know why he would doubt Juliet's reality. It seems like he would just think she was one of them.
Yeah, one of them.
So
Yeah.
that points in the direction of him not knowing. As does the fact that he never tells Juliet, you know, hey, there's
Exactly.
some marauders with arrows. We got to be careful, right?
Yeah.
And you might think he would do that. Um, on the other hand, him not knowing entirely also seems a little bit weird. And
Yeah.
his paranoia about leaving the vault and leaving the vault unattended does seem to be in the direction of him being worried about this, like that points more in the direction like he knows that these people are out there.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
more points in the direction of him not knowing than in the direction of him knowing. Is there some middle ground somehow? I don't know.
Yeah. I have no doubt that we will explore this fully. I mean, that's not a let's wait till the finale to investigate this. We've got stuff to do there. So I fully expect that we will learn all about this in nine.
I certainly hope so. I don't know. They might drag it out to where it's the season finale stuff. I mean, shifting over to Silo 18, I was actually more frustrated here.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, because apparently the Wizard of Oz was a red herring in terms of the idea of that being the book cipher. We did talk about that possibility already last week. Maybe it's not the Wizard of Oz, maybe it's some other book. And I recall even suggesting that why not use the Pact if you want it to be a book that's widely available in the silo.
Right.
But it would seem that he did use the Pact, but then there also seem to be indications that it has to be his personal copy of the Pact. I don't know. How do you read all of that?
Yeah, I had that exact same question and wondering, are there different printings, different, publications of this book as opposed to just we mass produced, I don't know, 10,000 copies of the packs. We can hand one out to everybody, and those are the copies that exist. Yeah, why does it have to be his specifically?
Well, he's
Why
got
would it
letters.
matter if he's written his name on it, right? He wants to know that that specific one is the one that he should use. So yeah, so what is special about that one? There must be something if that's the one he's using. That's where I've landed.
Well, there are letters that are underlined.
Hmm.
So that, I mean, it could just be that, right?
And he's
Uh,
he's marked his up so he knows how to use that one as opposed to not the other copies. Yeah.
I don't know, but then that means, because even from what we see, it seems like Lucas is more working with those underlying letters than anything. He doesn't get very far.
No.
Um, does he have the cipher to crack the code in the letter? Maybe, I suppose it would be plausible that the deal with Bernard is once you figured out how to do it, don't do it.
Yeah.
But we're gonna come and we're gonna do it together. That would make some sense. Bernard doesn't want Lucas to have the information first or whatever. But
Yeah.
why would Quinn make it only his pack that was useful? Um, because then he's really limiting who can crack the code severely.
I think that's right. So maybe it is that he just has, you basically his copy just lays it out in black and white. It's, you found the one with his name on it. It's got the letters you need. You can easily spell it out. It looks like Lucas is going letter by letter and reading what the words are. He's not having to go in and necessarily decipher much of anything because he can just read it straight out of the book. So it's just a matter of the ease of using his copy, which is already, sort of laid out black and white versus using a copy of the pack. We'd have to go in and match up the cipher with the letter and figure out what it actually says. So yeah, just be an ease of, we know that this is sort of the key to the test.
Yeah, but they don't. Is he? I mean, it almost felt to me like we didn't even quite get to what the book cipher is because
Yeah,
it did
yeah,
feel like he was just taking the letters from the book and
yeah.
that was giving him the message that, like, obvious, this cannot be the secret horrible truth, in its entirety because all that he's gotten so far is like, if you made it this far, the game's rigged.
Yeah, and that's I mean clearly what the frustrating part is. Not just that we don't know what the cipher is or how you actually was able to figure it out, but that I assumed that when we heard about an episode called the Book of Quinn, that would not just be, oh, we're going to find out what the book is. No, we're going to find out what the book says. But we get, just a short little preamble. It's apparently what's a much longer message, and we get absolutely none of that.
Well, and it's not even interesting.
Yeah,
Like that portion that he gets is not even interesting. I have nothing to say about it whatsoever.
no.
Right. Um, it is kind of interesting to me that Lucas is being given freedom of movement here, which I didn't necessarily foresee.
Hmm.
I kind of thought that maybe Bernard would keep him locked up in the vault,
Yeah.
but maybe Bernard does trust him more already than I thought Bernard would. Um, he's taking advantage of his power, but he doesn't really know how to use it in certain ways. Coming to some kind of loggerheads with Sims to some degree. I don't know what else do we need to talk about here. I mean, presumably people have seen the episode if they're listening to this.
Yeah, I just I don't want to say I feel let down by how they pursued this Lucas part of the story, but I mean he's had this goal, he's had this, some sense of momentum, and it just completely stalled out in this episode. Yes, we determined what the what the book is. Presumably, we'll learn more about the message, or maybe we won't. Maybe that becomes sort of the central mystery of there's something so bad that it forced Meadows to resign, forced her into 25 years of drunkenness, and eventually forced her to say, I've got to get out of here no matter what. Maybe that becomes a mystery of Bernard's going to do that himself, and we don't ever, it's a long time before we figure that out.
Yeah. I wonder if it's just that there are other silos.
Yeah.
Maybe that would function, you know. It's probably worth hitting on the fact that Bernard does tell Lucas here that, oh no, it wasn't the rebels who destroyed history, it was actually Salvador Quinn. Um, that didn't do a lot for me because I always already presumed that was the case. What about you?
Exactly. That was not the reveal that they were hoping it would be, I think.
It's like
Maybe for Terrence,
obviously
yeah,
it's
for
the
Terrence
people in
Pembroke
power.
it was, but for all of us, no, we already knew that.
Yeah, obviously it's the people in power who destroyed history and so on. Um, that there were recurring rebellions every 20 years or so prior to this. That feels relatively confirmed by the names on the wall down to mechanical and so on, I guess. Why would there be, maybe this is an interesting question. Why would there be recurring rebellions every 20 years?
Yeah, it seemed like Bernard made it seem like, oh, because there was, I don't know if it was just word of mouth, if it was just powerful storytelling, but back when my father led a rebellion, that we they were able to accomplish this and crush this person, whatever the stories were. But when there are no stories or no people alive to tell the stories of what happened, then there's no sense of, oh, we could do that too. We could do it even better. It just doesn't
Yeah.
exist anymore.
I mean, that does make sense. Maybe that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Then the question in my mind is sort of, well, why was the first rebellion happening? I mean, in part because, well, I guess we don't know. There's so much we know. Did prior to Salvador Quinn,
Hmm.
did the people in the silo know why they were in the silo? Like, did they really know
Yeah.
what was going on? Is that part of what's been erased?
Good question.
Um, and then if they did, I started thinking about whether that could be part of what was leading them to rebel. But that's kind of weird because we know the truth is that it is actually toxic and poisonous outside.
Exactly.
Um, so I don't know, but that is part of what I find myself wondering about is okay, well, if Salvador Quinn did this 140 years ago, um, how much of the structure of things in Silo 18 is the result of Salvador Quinn versus how much is the result of the plan of the founders?
Yes, however long ago, apparently 325 years ago, when the founders established this. Yeah, that's that. It's almost interesting that we have these two large chunks of time from 140 years ago to now, and from 140 years ago back to 325 years ago, where we do know basically nothing for the past 140 years because it was all erased or deleted by Quinn. And then there seems to be no history before that for some reason, whether Quinn or other, other reasons of why the founders did not leave us with enough information to know why these exist, which gets into all these other mysteries that we've talked about, why we're even here in the first place. But yeah, we've got
Yeah.
a lot of things to uncover.
My biggest hope again, and I think this could happen, right? Because I was speculating in a similar way with Silo 17, and I expect that these two stories will come together in some way. So I guess this
Hmm.
gets me thinking maybe part of what's in Quinn's letter when they finally decode it, maybe he's explaining why he was doing what he was doing in terms of destroying history and the relics and so on and so forth. And maybe part of it is he says something like, I've cut off communication with the other silos or something
Yeah.
like that. Right.
Yeah.
Like, so maybe we discover here at the end that Bernard and Lucas would have the ability to try to communicate with all of the other silos. And then maybe they'll try to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really hoping for some way in which we start going beyond just these two silos, one where it seems like everyone's dead, and the other
Yeah.
where, I mean, like, of course, we're sort of invested in these characters from Silo 18 from the beginning, but I want to start exploring the rest of the world a little bit more.
It almost feels like, and this is a bad analogy, but we had developed this we're running this race and we developed a pretty good pace and we were moving along at a real sort of um, steady pace as we approached the finish line, but we really slowed down in this episode quite a bit. But then I got to thinking it's like, I don't exactly know what the finish line is. Like, what are we pointing towards at the end of this episode? Just that the two silo stories emerge or converge in some way? That these, we want one big question, like what's in Quinn's letter answered. I don't know that we know what the finish line is that we're trying to eventually get to season, much less at the very end of this thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of what's exciting that we don't know what's to come.
Yeah, I think that's actually that's a feature, not a bug about the show. Like
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
But this isn't the first time I've said this about Silo. It's an attribute of the show
Hmm.
that I get the feeling sometimes that they've plotted out what's going to happen in each episode. And so sometimes you hit on one like this where, I'm imagining them having an outline of the events that are going to be covered in this episode. And then they film it to make it take an hour. Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like in this one, I feel like you didn't have an hour's worth of material. Right.
Yeah.
You just you like made this take an hour and it really didn't need to. You know what I mean? So
Well, can
it's
we talk about Walker for a minute?
yeah, let's absolutely talk about Walker.
Let's
You
talk
and
about
your
because I
recap had
just
some, skepticism here.
yeah, I just I understand her motivation of turning against her people and what she believed and what they're trying to do and all that she stood for all the way back to when we first met her with Juliet. I understand the motivations. I just don't buy it. I don't buy that she would turn her back on all of that and risk all of these people because she was married to Carla 25 years ago, because they held hands in a jail cell. And again, maybe just me, I just did not buy it. That's enough of why she would turn so quickly and start giving Bernard everything that he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I did not have that particular problem. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Um, in part, I don't know if you recall the details of our discussion on the podcast last week, but when this happened in this episode, part of me was sitting here thinking, well, I called that um, because I just sort of saw it coming in narrative terms.
Yeah.
Um, it does kind of seem like when she turned her camera on originally, she was just being stupid or not
Yeah.
thinking through what she was doing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that really feels in character, which is to your point, as I
Hmm.
understand it. I think that's fair. Um, then, well, she gets this order to go fix something. Walker's savvy. Walker's smart. I see what you're saying, right? You would imagine that she would see it coming that this was actually going to be
Yeah.
a meeting with Bernard or something, not actually fixing a water pump or whatever it is supposed to be. Um, I don't know. I mean, part of me was wondering if she did. That would be the other reading of it in a way that she knew by turning on the camera. She was kind of saying like, "Hey, look at me," and and this is actually what she expected to happen. Maybe she thought she'd be able to do more in terms of freeing Carla in this way, and that freeing Carla would be the important thing and be worth it. And it's more important than trying to raid supply or whatever. Let's get the head of supply back here to help us. If you
Yeah.
want to, try to pretend that it's not a matter of personal attachments. And then it doesn't work. But, I think part of the problem is, of course, it doesn't work, right? Like, of
Yeah.
course, Bernard's just going to threaten her and coerce her and threaten to torture Carla and not even really let her talk to Carla, see Carla, right? So you can see her, see?
But it's like that's it. It's like she gets nothing out of this arrangement. Absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
She's still in prison. She's still chained up. He's still going to be doing things to her. And Walker didn't even try and negotiate. Okay, well, we'll back off some levels, or we will come to some sort of agreement, or something. We won't fire things into the silo anymore, or whatever. If you show her to me, or give me some sort of signs of life or proof of life, whatever. It was immediately to I'm going to turn on them,
Yeah,
and that's
it's
what bothered me.
yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that's fair. Unfortunately, I also find myself thinking, well, almost the better plan would have been to betray them more, almost. Um, because well, Bernard just wants her to be a source of information, right? But Walker, I think, could have said, look, I hold influence down there.
Yeah,
I'm a respected figure.
yeah,
I can sway the behavior of people. Um, let's come up with a plan where I do that. I agree
right.
to, use my influence to help you quash this rebellion, and then you let Carla go. That would have been like a better negotiating position, I think.
Yeah. It's almost like, okay, now that our people have been captured and we've got more of a rallying cry. I mean, they're painting the names of people on the wall who are martyrs for this cause. Now we've got even more, right, flame to sort of get this thing started. Yeah, it just seems like it might have the opposite impact of what she's wanting.
Yeah, or even what Bernard's wanting in a way, I mean, it's presents that kind of question of um, he, how do you quash a rebellion? How do you end a
Yeah.
riot? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do you sort of meet violence with violence, force with force, um, suppress the rebellion, in that way?
Yeah.
And then that clearly seems to be what Bernard's trying to do. He doesn't know any other way to do it.
Right.
Um,
Right. Exactly.
the other way to do it, though, is through, I don't know, negotiation, compromise. Anyway, how did Martin Luther King Jr. put it? It's like a positive peace that is the presence of justice, as opposed to the negative peace that is the absence of tension. Whatever that line is. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
um,
Just interesting turn of development. Be interesting to see where that goes. But yeah, I was not expecting that, I guess.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I was expecting it, and then, like, that's the main difference. So now we're debating on whether it's in character.
Yeah.
I can take your point that it doesn't feel like it's in character from what we know of Walker, but I do feel like they set it up to where I wasn't at all surprised that this is where that
Yeah.
plot line went. You want to talk about Billings at all? Any shows as
Yeah,
plot?
let's just we can touch on Billings, who, his wife finds out that he is keeping this piece of a relic that he has shown to Patrick Kennedy and other people apparently. And she wants to see it. She wants to see what, this page showed, what the outside world used to look like. And I don't know, this just became more of a Billings is getting it from his wife and from Shirley in this episode, kind of, you need to make some tough choices here. I think this is sort of representative of that.
Yeah, I think so. Murphy, Badger, yeah, I think he knows what he's doing. I think he's
Yeah.
messing with their marriage a little bit.
I,
Like, I'm going
I
to find
just
out if Paul showed his wife this thing.
yeah, I was also how sincere he is in this. I'm not exactly sure, but having that conversation with Shirley in the cafeteria where he's saying, I can't go that far because the pact does not allow it, and I can only do so much because I'm governed by the laws stated in the pact. It's like, man, we are beyond. I mean, I'm with Shirley on this. We are beyond that. You got to sort of pick a side here because people that are not clearly following this and are sort of these two sides are forming. You've got to pick one.
Yeah. So then we're back to that dynamic that we've talked about before on here that unfortunately we do not want him to pick the side of mechanical, right? We don't want him
Yes.
to pick the side of the rebellion because then the risk is that makes the rebellion truly successful. And we saw the results of what happened in Silo 17
Yeah.
when the rebellion was ultimately being led by the sheriff and they all start marching outside and dying. So, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that they're playing with. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. No, just I mean, in particularly dense episode with a lot of different storylines running through it, I think that was set up for us to show. Yeah, Billings is coming up with a tough choice here in the next couple episodes.
yeah, for sure. Anything with Sims we need to hit on? Feel like I should at least mention his name.
Yeah.
He's threatening Lucas. We have that continuing
Threatening
thread
Lucas
of
and
tension.
coming to a temporary peace with Amundsen and working together, kind of against Bernard for a few, at least for a short period of time, whereas they both kind of start to see what the danger, or at least they perceive will be the danger that Bernard could introduce here. That them working together was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, but then Amundsen says, "Hey, I gave you a little bit of information. We're done now. This is all I was going to
Yeah,
do."
that's
But he does help Sims find Lucas. Yeah, I don't feel like I have a ton more to say about that, but it definitely is there as we've got a conflict that has more than two sides, insofar as Sims is a third side or a kind of wild card or something like that in terms of what he and Camille are trying to do
Yeah.
ultimately. So we'll see how all of that plays out. So yeah, again, maybe a little bit disappointed in this episode, a little bit frustrated that we didn't get further here.
Yeah. That's all right. We got time to build it back up. We have probably 2 hours left to go.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about this one before we wrap it up?
That's good for me.
All right. So thanks as always for listening to the TV Obsessive Podcast. We'll be back next week to talk about Silo Season 2, Episode 9, called Safeguard. Hopefully something will happen. Yeah. I mean, look, we do have this going for us that if it's spinning its wheels a little bit here in Episode 8, that's because everything's going to go down.
Yeah, that's right. We're we're
And
past
by
eight.
episode
We're
10,
on.
anyway,
Yeah,
you know.
we're
Um,
Bill Belichick. We're on to episode 9. We're
yeah.
ready to go.
So again, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please do consider leaving us a good rating, review. Check out tvobsessive.com. You can find there articles on each episode of Silo. Ryan's writing here episode by episode on season 2. I wrote on season 1. If you want to look back at those. And articles on all sorts of other TV shows and things like that as well. Hopefully you'll check out the site. Follow TV Obsessive on social media. Search for TV Obsessive. And we'll see you next week.
All right. See you next time for episode 9.